He's three law firms on retainer. I don't know how much money is coming in, but I know that a lot of money is going out every single month for Diddy.
The man who once bragged about being in the car now says it was all fiction. For years, the public viewed Dwayne Keefe D. Davis as the loudmouth eyewitness who openly described how Tupac Shakur was gunned down in 1996. His story circulated for decades, until a Nevada grand jury transformed those claims into a criminal indictment. Suddenly, the narrative changed. Now a new legal move has surfaced, and it's spreading quickly. Keefe D is attempting to pull Sean Diddy Combs into court, arguing that his past confessions were exaggerated stories told under the belief that he was protected. In his 2019 memoir Compton Street Legend, he described everything in detail. The white Cadillac, the Glock pistol, the seating positions inside the car, and even a rumored $1 million bounty connected to the killing. Then everything changed. In September 2023, he was formally charged. By July 2025, Diddy had already been sentenced to 50 months in federal prison on separate Mann Act-related convictions. So the question becomes unavoidable. If those confessions were fictional, why were they so specific? And if they were true, why try to take them back now? Because if Diddy is forced to testify under oath, one of them could lose everything.
Well, I think some of it did have to do with that battery by a prisoner case, which he went to trial on and was found guilty. I think in some ways it can be like a sports team. If you come up short, sometimes you need to change the leadership.
That is exactly the gamble the defense appears to be making. The indictment issued on September 28, 2023, is not built around a surprise witness or hidden surveillance footage. Instead, it relies heavily on Keefe D's own admissions, repeated for years across interviews, documentaries, and most recklessly, his 2019 memoir Compton Street Legend. Prosecutors did not need to pressure him into the story. He placed himself in the white Cadillac voluntarily. He described the Glock .40 handgun, the armrest compartment where it was stored, and even detailed his position in the front seat. He didn't hedge or speak vaguely. He narrated the entire scene. Law enforcement later confirmed that renewed attention toward the case began after his media appearances starting in 2018. That detail matters. This was not a man cornered in an interrogation room. This was someone touring his own story publicly. Now, with trial approaching and a homicide charge with a gang enhancement, the same words he once used to build his reputation have become key pieces of evidence. Sources close to the case say the shift in his story is not subtle. It's survival. The official explanation of the shooting has always seemed simple: retaliation. On September 7, 1996, surveillance footage captured Tupac Shakur attacking Orlando Anderson inside the MGM Grand Casino in Las Vegas. The confrontation was immediate and humiliating. Just hours later, a white Cadillac pulled alongside the black BMW carrying Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight on the Las Vegas Strip. Gunshots erupted. 6 days later, Tupac was dead, and hip-hop was changed forever. For decades, investigators and commentators repeated the same conclusion. The casino fight triggered a revenge attack that same night. Even Keefe D's earlier accounts leaned into that explanation. A personal dispute. Quick retaliation. Case closed, at least in theory. But that is where the story begins to unravel. Because Keefe D didn't just describe retaliation. He added money. He described conversations, business deals, and a possible bounty. Suddenly, what looked like a spontaneous street conflict began to sound transactional. And that complicates the simple narrative prosecutors are presenting to the jury.
Pac would have boxed him. Pac would have loved to beat his ass in the ring, raise some money, and give it to the hood.
In his book and previous interviews, Keefe D claims he once had a conversation with Sean Diddy Combs. According to him, the driving force behind that conversation was fear of Suge Knight and the escalating tension between the East Coast and West Coast rap scenes. He even described an alleged $1 million bounty offered to solve the problem. In his version of events, the discussion took place at Greenblatt's Deli in Los Angeles. He portrays the meeting as business, not impulse. But one detail in the story now raises serious questions. Keefe D also claims the payment never came. If the bounty was real, where is the money? And if the story was fabricated, why repeat the exact same figure, $1 million, so consistently over the years? Industry insiders say that number feels unusual. It's too specific to be accidental, yet too perfectly round to feel random. Now the defense strategy centers on a bold move, forcing Diddy into a Nevada courtroom to deny the claim under oath. This is not a simple witness request. It's a calculated gamble. If Diddy publicly rejects the bounty story, Keefe D can argue that his earlier statements were exaggerated, but if Diddy confirms even the smallest part of the claim, the entire case could explode beyond a single shooter and expand into something much larger.
Keefe D named Diddy 77 times in court documents related to Tupac.
The immunity angle adds another layer of tension to the case. In 2008, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis participated in a formal interview session with Los Angeles law enforcement during an unrelated investigation. At the time, he believed that cooperating with authorities would protect him from prosecution related to the 1996 shooting of Tupac Shakur. Detectives later acknowledged that his admissions helped reignite the long-cold investigation. However, what Keefe D appears to have misunderstood is that immunity does not extend beyond the specific circumstances of that agreement. It does not apply to memoirs. It does not cover televised interviews. And it certainly does not protect statements made in documentaries or media appearances years later. Legal analysts following the case say that distinction is crucial. A proffer agreement protects statements made within its legal scope, not voluntary confessions repeated publicly years afterward. This is where the story begins to shift. If Keefe D truly believed he was fully protected, why did he continue adding new details years later? Why did he escalate his story between 2018 and 2019, moving from simply being present to describing the weapon, the seating positions, and even the aftermath of the shooting? Sources close to the case say he became increasingly comfortable discussing the events, sometimes even appearing proud of the notoriety his story generated. But as court dates approach, that comfort now looks catastrophic. There is also the matter of who is no longer alive to testify. Orlando Anderson is gone. Eric Zip Martin, the alleged middleman Keefe D once linked to discussions about the gun, is gone. Yafayaki Gaddafi Fula, a witness who was reportedly riding in a trailing vehicle that night, is also gone. One by one, individuals connected to the narrative have disappeared over time. That leaves Keefe D as the only living suspect prosecutors can charge. This isolation increases both his leverage and his risk. Prosecutors argue that it simplifies the case. One surviving participant and one clear indictment. But within the music industry, some insiders whisper that it also concentrates power in a single voice. With no co-defendants alive to contradict him, Keefe D's words now carry enormous weight. And now he appears to want Sean Diddy Combs to share some of that burden. To many observers, the move feels less like loyalty and more like a redistribution of blame. Meanwhile, Diddy's silence on the Shakur allegations has been notable, especially as he serves a 50-month federal sentence at FCI Fort Dix following convictions under the Mann Act in July 2025.
2 months?
4 years, 2 months in prison.
Wow.
He served a year. He gets some time. He gets 15% credit, so he'd be at 14-ish.
2.5 years.
2 months.
So, and then he gets another 15% in the remaining.
Yeah.
He's out in 2 years.
Yeah. Should have stuck with the original guest.
I know. Yeah.
What makes the situation even more explosive is the timing. Few people expected Diddy's name to resurface in connection with the 1996 Tupac Shakur case, while he was already in federal custody. In October 2025, Sean Diddy Combs received a 50-month sentence after being acquitted of racketeering charges, but convicted on 2 transportation-related counts. His appeal is currently scheduled for April 9, 2026. Once estimated to be worth nearly $1 billion, his net worth is now believed to fall somewhere between $400 million and $600 million, while more than 100 civil lawsuits continue to surround him. Against that backdrop, being subpoenaed in a decades-old homicide trial is far from background noise. It becomes another major pressure point. Industry insiders say Diddy's legal team views any formal attempt to link him to Tupac Shakur's death as reputational dynamite, even if no criminal charges are filed. And that raises an important question. Is Keefe D exploiting Diddy's legal vulnerability, or is he reacting to it? Many observers believe the timing feels far too precise to be accidental.
In New York City, we are hearing Diddy's attorneys speaking to the media after he was sentenced earlier today. This is live.
So yeah, we are planning to appeal.
Man, I want to hear them, bro.
We are planning to appeal. We think we have strong bases.
Complicating matters further is Keefe D's recent shift in strategy. Through legal filings and statements relayed by people close to his defense team, Keefe D now claims that many of his earlier stories were embellished narratives designed for attention and profit. He argues that he spoke openly because he believed he could never be charged for the crime. According to this new position, the book, interviews, and media appearances were part survival strategy, part bravado. But this explanation collides directly with the tone of his earlier accounts. In Compton Street Legend, Keefe D described the night of the shooting with remarkable cinematic detail, even referring to the killing as collateral damage. That phrase now sits uncomfortably in a courtroom. If he was inventing the story, why use language that suggests acceptance of responsibility? And if the story was truthful, why suddenly reframe it as fiction after being indicted? Legal observers say juries are often skeptical of sudden memory reversals when a potential prison sentence becomes real. Still, the defense appears ready to argue that swagger and storytelling are not the same thing as factual accuracy. This is where the narrative threatens to fracture even further. Officially, the charge remains open murder with a deadly weapon and a gang enhancement. The surface motive remains simple: retaliation following the MGM Grand Casino confrontation just hours before the shooting. But beneath that explanation lies a far more complicated story, one involving alleged bounty payments, fear among powerful music executives, and rivalry stretching back to the 1994 Quad Studios shooting. In a Vibe magazine interview, Tupac Shakur himself once suggested that Diddy knew more about the situation than he publicly admitted. Those suspicions never resulted in criminal charges. But culturally, they never disappeared either. Now, nearly 3 decades later, those same allegations are resurfacing, not as rumors, but as potential courtroom testimony. And that creates a dangerous scenario. If Diddy denies the claims under oath, the defense must explain why Keefe D repeatedly attached his name to the story for years. If Diddy refuses to testify or distances himself, speculation will only intensify. Either way, the one simple explanation of a casino fight spiraling into violence is beginning to collapse under the weight of far more complicated questions.
So these are fluorescent lights.
Yeah.
And you're sleeping in that light. What was the first night there?
First night was very intense. Again, I'm, coming down off drugs, and by that time, the second time I went in, between the 2 times I got in a terrible...
The case now moves forward in a way that is officially narrow but practically volatile. A grand jury indictment in 2023 reignites the investigation. A 2019 memoir suddenly becomes prosecutorial evidence. A 2008 proffer session returns to the spotlight. And a federal sentence handed down in 2025 complicates alliances that once remained silent. Each date now acts as a pressure point. Every public statement carries the potential to become evidence in court. Sources close to both sides say the atmosphere surrounding the case is tense. On the surface, things appear controlled and procedural, but behind the scenes, reactions are constant and strategic. Because the next phase of this story is no longer theoretical. It is live testimony. Once witnesses are sworn in and statements are made under oath, the situation changes dramatically. At that point, one of 2 things will happen. Either the bounty narrative collapses, or it explodes far beyond the limits of a single indictment. The central contradiction still remains unresolved. Was this always about a personal score settled in Las Vegas? Or was it business disguised as loyalty? That answer may ultimately depend on testimony from the one-man Dwayne Keefe D. Davis now insists must speak, Sean Diddy Combs.
The reason we asked everyone to be here today is obviously we are the new attorneys for Dwayne Davis in the Tupac case, now set for trial February of next year. The reason in particular that we asked the media to be here is that, obviously we're not trying the case in the media, but we want to establish better relations with the...
What makes the situation even harder to dismiss is that the Tupac Shakur case never existed in isolation. It sits inside a much larger history of rivalry, suspicion, and unresolved violence that still echoes throughout hip-hop culture. Long before the current indictment, there was the 1994 Quad Studios shooting in New York. During that incident, Tupac Shakur survived after being shot 5 times. In the aftermath, Shakur publicly stated in a Vibe magazine interview that he believed certain figures in the industry knew more than they admitted. The accusation never resulted in criminal charges, but it shattered trust. Alliances hardened, suspicions grew, and the hostility between East Coast and West Coast hip-hop soon evolved into cultural folklore. Industry veterans say the resentment from that era never truly disappeared. It simply went quiet. When Keefe D later introduced the idea of financial motives and bounty payments, he wasn't creating tension out of nothing. Instead, he was connecting his story to an already volatile environment. That environment includes decades of public denials, carefully worded statements, and unresolved suspicions that many now view less as closure and more as containment. The shadow grows even longer when the 1997 murder of Christopher Wallace, better known as Biggie Smalls, enters the conversation. Like the Tupac Shakur case, no one has ever been officially charged. Over the years, theories multiplied. In a recent documentary appearance, Bad Boy Records co-founder Kirk Burroughs made a striking claim. He alleged that Sean Diddy Combs pushed Biggie Smalls to remain on the West Coast at a time when tensions were dangerously high. According to Burroughs, that decision may have increased the risk that ultimately led to Biggie's fatal shooting in March 1997. The allegation has never become a formal prosecution, but it reinforces a recurring theme: powerful decisions made by influential figures, while others pay the ultimate price. Former LAPD Detective Greg Kading added to that suspicion when he publicly stated that Diddy was not helpful in the investigation into Biggie's murder. Suddenly, the central question shifts. It is no longer just about who pulled the trigger in Las Vegas. It becomes about whether silence, influence, and power helped shape which investigations moved forward, and which ones stalled. Now that Keefe D is attempting to compel testimony from Diddy, those long-standing suspicions have resurfaced. If two of the most iconic tragedies in hip-hop history share overlapping names and unresolved tensions, the idea of coincidence begins to feel thinner. Even without formal charges, the reputational gravity is enormous.
So she testified, excuse me, that she was Diddy's ex-assistant. She said he raped her, sexually assaulted her in various ways multiple times. He exacted unbelievable violence against her, threatened her, one point allegedly threatened to take her phone and use anything on the phone.
Then there is the cultural machine that continues to keep this story alive. A Netflix documentary titled Sean Combs, The Reckoning, reportedly produced by longtime rival 50 Cent, recently surged to the top of the platform's charts. The series reintroduces a new generation to old allegations. Audio from Keefe D's proffer sessions begins circulating again. Claims of a $1 million bounty allegedly linked to Diddy replay across social media. Inside the documentary, Kirk Burroughs also presents journals that he claims document unusual car rentals and internal tensions within Bad Boy Records during the mid-1990s. According to Burroughs, these journals reflect meticulous record-keeping surrounding key moments in the label's history. In response, Diddy's legal team reportedly issued a cease and desist notice regarding the use of certain pre-trial footage included in the documentary, arguing that the material had never been authorized. But instead of silencing the narrative, the legal pushback only amplified it. Industry insiders say the optics matter. Whenever legal threats and cease and desist letters enter the conversation, audiences often assume there must be something significant behind the smoke. None of this constitutes proof in a courtroom, but it does create a powerful public atmosphere. And within that atmosphere, Keefe D's attempt to force Diddy into open testimony begins to look less random and more strategic, tapping directly into a massive public appetite for answers.
We've done 3 others where we've laid out the prosecution case. This time, we're talking specifically, what is Diddy's defense? And we decided to test it with a mock jury, and it is fascinating.
It is absolutely fascinating, keeping in mind that the real jury will be sitting down to do this. The trial starts first.
Money complicates everything. At one point, Sean Diddy Combs presided over an empire that stretched across music, fashion, spirits, media, and nightlife. Forbes once estimated his net worth at nearly $1 billion before his legal troubles began to unravel that image. Today, those numbers look very different. Current estimates place his wealth hundreds of millions lower, as civil lawsuits accumulate and major brand partnerships quietly disappear. Financial analysts describe the situation as the kind of collapse rarely seen outside the most extreme celebrity downfalls. Against that backdrop, any renewed association with a 1996 homicide investigation carries consequences far beyond reputation. It threatens assets. In the modern entertainment industry, reputation drives valuation. Sponsors watch headlines. Investors track public sentiment. Every scandal becomes a data point. If sworn testimony drags the bounty narrative back into national headlines, even without formal charges, the financial impact could be significant. People close to Diddy's camp insist he has always denied involvement. They point to past interviews where he dismissed the allegations as pure fiction and completely ridiculous. But denial does not erase repetition. Each time the story resurfaces, another crack appears in the public perception of certainty. And now Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, facing enormous legal pressure, appears willing to aim directly at the largest target in the room.
You had day 17 on the Diddy trial as the biggest one yet. Guess what? Bingo, you won, because today was probably the most eventful day as far as things that happened that were said on the stand and most importantly, things that the judge said, because Diddy almost got kicked out of his own.
At the same time, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis faces a credibility crisis of his own. For years, he leaned into the role of insider. In interviews and documentaries, he portrayed himself as the only living person who truly knew what happened the night Tupac Shakur was killed. In a 2018 series, he stated confidently, "I'm the only one alive who can really tell you the story about the Shakur incident." But today, that confidence carries a different weight. If Keefe D truly is the last surviving witness, he controls the narrative. Yet control cuts both ways. In a courtroom, juries examine consistency. They scrutinize motive. They search for reasons someone might exaggerate or minimize their role in a crime. By now claiming that his earlier confessions were simply monetized storytelling, Keefe D invites intense scrutiny of every statement he has ever made publicly. Legal analysts say sudden reversals rarely appear organic. They tend to look tactical, and tactics usually signal fear. Whether that fear comes from overwhelming evidence or from years of miscalculated bravado remains unclear. What is clear is that the battle over credibility is just as important as the homicide charge itself. Behind closed doors, insiders describe the situation not as a chaotic brawl, but as a chess match. Subpoenaing Diddy forces a strategic decision. He can comply and testify, risking the revival of decades-old suspicions under oath. Or he can resist, potentially appearing evasive. If he testifies and firmly denies the bounty allegations, it may strengthen Keefe D's argument that his earlier claims were exaggerated. But testimony would also open the door to cross-examination about relationships, rivalries, and industry dynamics stretching back nearly 30 years. Every move carries consequences. Meanwhile, prosecutors face a dilemma of their own. They must decide how far to allow the bounty narrative to influence the case without overcomplicating a prosecution that could rely heavily on retaliation and self-incrimination. Too much emphasis on alleged financial motives could blur the jury's focus. Too little could allow the defense to argue that investigators ignored alternative explanations. Because in the end, this case is not just about what happened on a street in Las Vegas in 1996. It is about narrative control inside a courtroom where culture, money, and ego collide. Reputations built over decades can fracture in a matter of hours under oath, and the implications run deeper still. If the truth ultimately depends on testimony from men whose public personas were built on bravado, loyalty, and dominance, how clear can that truth really be? The East Coast-West Coast feud once played out through diss tracks, interviews, and award show confrontations. Now it unfolds through subpoenas, indictments, and legal motions. The players have aged. The stakes have not softened, they have transformed. Once, Keefe D appeared to enjoy his proximity to infamy. Once, Diddy seemed untouchable at the top of a billion-dollar empire. Today, one man faces a homicide charge, while the other navigates prison time, appeals, and relentless civil litigation. Their stories now intersect again. Not in a recording studio or backstage at an awards show, but in a courtroom where precision matters more than performance. And the culture that once treated their rivalry as spectacle now watches for something different. Accountability. So where does this leave the story? With one man claiming he embellished the past to survive, and another insisting he had nothing to do with it. With decades of unresolved suspicion now converging in a single legal proceeding. With financial empires shaking and old alliances exposed to cross-examination. Is this a desperate attempt to spread responsibility, or a last-ditch effort to pull hidden players into the light? Will the bounty narrative collapse under oath, or will it force a broader reckoning about power inside the music industry? And if the only surviving witness rewrites his own story, what does that say about everything we thought we knew? Let us know what you think in the comments, because this story is far from finished, and the next move could change everything.